Aha. My son lost me.
You didn't lose you.
Dumb me. I had to freshen up. I went in the men's room. I came out the men's room at the other door. So I'm wandering around, where am I? And my son's thinking, what happened? Where's Dad? So he starts to send the heads to security. And when he comes up to security, he said, it's the white, my dad, what color shirt? White shirt. Aha, you're the white group today. You'll notice there's a yellow group and a blue group. That lets security know which group got lost. And the security people go up to the vet and say, it's nice to see you. Who are you? Some of us don't know who we are. That's what the name tag's all about. So security can call a white group and say, okay, this is the one we found. Well, fortunately, my son found me. But that's what this is all about and how thorough they were. Because let me tell you, we do get lost. And some of us don't know who we are at this point. Well, at mid-morning, then we went on, put the Korean one on there. Now, some of you who are in Korea, just take a look at this thing. Oversized U.S. infantry marching through a field. My brother was in Korea, and he said, Dad, my brother was also an airborne ranger, infantry, but said, walking across that paddy field with that gun exposed, waiting for the horde to run at you, it was tough. So to me, this Korean monument is awesome and scary. I mean, the World War II is magnificent. This one is scary. And we walked over to that. Then, obviously, you all know the Vietnam, that famous Iwo Jima symbol. Mid-afternoon, we get on the bus after those two, box lunch, and we go to the Air Force. Now, it's kind of fun. In my 60 veterans, there were two women. One was an Army nurse, the other was the Navy wave. I don't know how many of you knew it. We didn't. The Naves were waves. The women Navy waves were not allowed out of Washington, D.C. Well, the Army nurse just laughed and said, let me tell you where we were, all over the place. But another thing in our trivia that you'd be, I think, enjoy, we had a couple of pilots in our group. And one of them said, well, gee, what was the Air Force like? And the guy said, what are you talking about? There was no Air Force. I was Army Air Corps, part of the Army. And there's that kind of trivia that just kind of has drifted by. Now, you've all seen the Vietnam Memorial. A lot of you have been there, and that's got great publicity. And we left that. And one of the things that has disappointed me in my presentation that I have not given you, and I don't know if you go way back. Let me talk a little bit. I was going to try to get you young people to understand what it was like in World War II. And those of you who have anybody in your family who's in the late 80s or 90s, particularly the women, you might ask them, how many of you people have tried to live with food stamps? How many of you have even thought about gas rationing? I mean, let me tell you, gas rationing was precious. And mother and father, I remember, boy, oh boy, you walked, all the kids walked everywhere. But food stamps, there was not enough food to feed people. And ask some of your, particularly the women, what they did during the war. Victory gardens were everywhere. And man, if you could grow your lettuce and your radish as you did. Also, of my class of 330 women, only 2 were in the war. One was Rosie the Riveter, and the other had her pilot's license, and she ferried planes from Kansas to Newfoundland. That was her war effort. But it was my mother and all the other people who were rolling bandages, and that's when the women went to factories. And you know, you professional women should really thank what people call the greatest generation, because the women never left work. And fortunately, even though there's bias and prejudice now, things were better. But this country, in my mind, is so much better off because now the human resources of the women are able to contribute in more ways than they did before, in addition to being a homemaker, a secretary, a nurse, etc. We have lawyers, doctors, physicians, and most women today are raised like my granddaughter. Well, what do you want to be, dear? You just go ahead. You see, you can be anything. Now, my older sister wanted to go to law school. My father laughed at her. Women are not lawyers. You know, marry, raise the kids. You're a homemaker. So do professional women, as bad as things are, you might say, you know, those old grouches, those old guys, we weren't all bad. But that was one of the things I wanted to let you know. The other thing that I wanted you to be aware of is the massive number of people that were in the war. I see that the total number of troops were 16 million directly and indirectly, and the loss that I have up there is 1 in 56. Now the Merchant Marine, tiny, only 215,000 of us. And incidentally, we had the highest mortality rate. Most people think it's the Marines because they were always being shot at. Merchant Marine, it was go, no go. You sunk or you made it. I just wanted to try to position and ask you, take advantage of some of the older women that you know. What did you do during the war? What do you remember? But back to this. We got to the honor flight in the afternoon, and I wanted to show you the honor flight in particular because they're the Air Force, right? Air Force are going to do things differently. Here we just went past it. Back one more. Now, this is the Air Force. The others are all clustered together. I mean, you know, you can walk from one to the other, etc. Not the Air Force. Man, we're up on the hill. We're all by ourselves looking down. It's beautiful, and it's the vapor trail, kind of. It's kind of a nice symbol, etc. And frankly, that's where I ran out of gas. Because when you get up there, that's up the hill. My son had to push me in the wheelchair up the hill. And I said, well, okay. But it's impressive. After the way, yep. Everybody's been in Arlington Cemetery, right? You know, you go to the changing Tomb of the Unknown Soldier up there. Let me tell you, after being all day long, driving through that cemetery is an emotional thing. Then you're back to the bus, and sure enough, you're tired. Gerald described it beautifully. When you land, come on guys, we've been up 12 hours, 14 hours, we're tired. But all of a sudden, you're heading for baggage and you start to hear noise. And the noise you hear are the family, people, and sometimes people that are just happen to be in the airport and see that. And in our situation, you know, there were handshakes, there was clapping. You really kind of tried to stand up, you know, say, okay, I'm going to make it. And then what I think was absolutely wonderful, and God bless the women, you come around the corner and all of a sudden, before you get there, you hear Glenn Miller music, you know, our kind of old stuff. And there are a half a dozen women, bobby socks, skirts, dressed just the way we were in high school, and they were jitterbugging. And they grabbed a couple of the younger guys who still walk and started to jitterbug. And that basically is the way the day ends. But man, it's nice to have signs, welcome home, Grandpa, nice to see you. And I want you to know that I'm all through. I'll give you any cue and answer. You've been very polite. Not many of you have left. And I'd be happy to answer anything. But I want you to know that Mark Welch is here. And Mark is a retired guy who is committed to finding, talking, getting guardians, people who know who's eligible to go. And he'll be very happy to stay afterwards and answer any questions. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for me? Otherwise, thank you for listening very much.
There's one statistic really surprised me, and I believe it was the 4F category, who 45%, if I read this right, 45% of the merchant marine volunteers
No,
classified 4F.
100%. My particular ship, everybody in the merchant marine was a volunteer, 100%. My particular ship, half of the crew were 4F, and physically or not, couldn't eligible. They just wanted to serve. The other half were old age, older guys, etc. For instance, the fireman, one of the firemen on my ship, a Chinese fellow, I don't know whether he was 45 or he was really old, 45 or 50. Well, we pulled into Chinatown, San Francisco, and he said, come out, I'll buy you lunch. So we go to the restaurant. We walked into Chinatown, and people, let's see. Walked into the restaurant. It's his restaurant. The damn Japanese. He was a volunteer because as a fireman, and he owns the restaurant. So I'm telling you, the fellows that I served with, 100% volunteer. And my group, half were 4F. Because there's a lot of fellows then, that when you were 4F, like another one of my buddies, Walter Fisher from the Fisher family in Detroit, he was 4F. Well, he was working in building engines in the factory, but it was either factory and some of the guys. Many of the 4F fellows had fished and were happy to be on the deck. But no, 100% volunteer merchant marine.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Could we hear from Mark?
Mark, would you be kind enough?
I'm bashful, but I'll try.
And by the way, a volunteer, this is what he does.
We are